So I am here to host Dr. Todd Dewett. What a wonderful personality. While I was reading his biography, he's been appearing in almost too many websites that I searched for. So I could probably look at his life as a book itself. So I will keep his introduction really short because he's done some amazing work and work to make difference in individuals and to make the world better. All of us tell us to people, he's genuine. And if he's genuine, you can trust him. And today, what we are going to talk about is authenticity. And this is the topic which I have been craving to hear. And we have the best man with us today. And I would like all of you to give your best 60 minutes from now so that we can learn and ask the questions which can help us grow and be that individuals will be trusted in and around us. About Dr. Todd, he is a global keynote speaker, best-selling author, LinkedIn learning author, leadership and authenticity guru, two-time TEDx speaker. That's been my dream on TEDx. And he is also best-selling leadership author, educator and professional speaker. I heard a couple of his videos while I wanted to know more about him today. But one thing for sure, it doesn't matter who you are, where are you from. As long as you are authentic, you will stand out. And that's the message that we are going to learn today. And without much ado, I would like to now hand over the stage to Dr. Todd. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a wonderful introduction. I appreciate that very, very much. Hi, it's a pleasure to see every single one of you. I wish I could see more faces, but hello. I know that you're in different places in different time zones. Let me start by saying I'm Todd. Welcome to my home office in Houston, Texas, in the States. It's a pleasure to have you in my home. So I'm lucky I get a few minutes to chat with you about something I have a lot of passion for, something that frankly I think is practical and useful to you, which makes me, to be honest, one of the most lucky people you will ever meet in your whole life. I get to talk about and write about things I really enjoy, and it helps people and it makes me a living. So believe me, when people talk about achieving a dream job and finding high fit, it is possible. Sure, a little luck, maybe. Sure, lots of hard work, absolutely. But it's possible. I'm proof of that, and I love reminding people of that. So what are we going to talk about for the next 20, 25 minutes? I'll tell you, we're going to talk about authenticity. Here's why. Most professionals that I meet, and I have to be honest with you, I meet a whole lot of people. I'm in front of people electronically and in person, I should say before the pandemic, in person with many, many, many people. Over 1,000 gigs at this point, hundreds of thousands in live audiences, many, many millions in online audiences. I thus hear a million stories. I'm so lucky. I hear a million stories from people. Here's what I learned from my observations personally and from their stories. We go to work every day, follow me, and we act, which is really kind of funny because almost all of us were not trained to be actors, but we feel compelled every day to manage impressions. Now listen, that is a version of social intelligence. The idea is simple. We go to work and we want to please our boss. We want to do right, do well by our colleagues. We want to make our clients and vendors and customers happy. And so what do? We try to understand through words or through observation what they expect. And then we try to behave and speak and act in a way that's consistent with those expectations. That is a form of social intelligence. I want to validate that for you. And now I want to blow it up and tell you to stop doing it so much. The truth is that we absolutely overact and we absolutely overreach all the time in our professional relationships in an effort to be professional, in an effort to meet their expectations. I like that we do it. We do it too much. In fact, we do it so much that many of our professional relationships are oddly distant and plastic and cool and measured. So here's what I want to remind you. I want to remind you as a scientist, as a practitioner, as a person who has the pleasure of talking with you tonight, you can do better. You can be a person, not just a professional. Let me say that again. You're not supposed to be best friends with everyone at work. I'm not suggesting that. That can be odd or problematic in its own right. You are supposed to be more than just a professional. The highest performing teams, the most productive relationships, they are always more than just professional. They are human and engaging. Here's the funny thing. What we know about humans at work is very clear. They want honest rapport with other humans, bonds that are not superficial. And we deny it to each other all the time, quite passionately, because we think it's inappropriate. We've been trained to think it's inappropriate. I just want to remind you that is generally wrong. Yes, it's true. Not everyone wants wonderful authenticity all the time, and they do want a distant relationship. That's the minority, and they're not going to be high achieving, long-term, amazing, inspiring leaders. The most productive, interesting, heartwarming people you'll ever meet professionally understand this is a characteristic we need to gain a little more understanding of and a little more comfort with. And so let me tell you, you've seen a lot of leadership gurus. I know that. I'm guessing I look a little different than most of them. Just take a close look at me and you can tell. It took me, and I love to admit this to you, ready? It took me many years, I'm talking 25 plus, to go through my journey of conforming full-time for all the right reasons, managing impressions, social intelligence, etc. For all the right reasons, to finally, slowly building up expertise and letting my real self out so that I can be less filtered, less of an actor, more of an honest, real human being, which, believe me, almost always leads to more rapport, which is the basis of trust, which means stronger, more productive teams. That is the way this works. Now, for me, I'll be honest, I was in my 20s, I was wearing a very expensive suit, and I used to wear white shirts and ties. I don't own any suits and ties anymore, but I used to. And when I was young, everyone was wearing them. That was the expectation. Now, I'm going to talk to you a little different today than you're used to and tell a few very abbreviated stories, just some shorter versions of what I might offer in a keynote to make a point. I was a suit wearing normal young professional who wanted to meet the expectations of everyone else. I did that as long as I felt I had to do that. And then I'll be honest with you, something very strange happened. I rolled up my sleeves and I went to work. I was in Matamoros, Mexico, working for what is now called Accenture. And I did it. I really hit a home run. I'll spare you the details, but I was asked to help a team make some breakthroughs. And we actually did. And it had a little to do with me and a lot to do with some people I was working with. But together, we just really killed it. And the client was so happy and my boss was so happy. And I knew I was going to get a promotion, which I'll admit to you, I really wanted. It was going to be my first promotion as a young professional. And I got back to the States when the gig was over, knowing that promotion was going to happen. And my boss called me one day. I was in the office. He said, "Would you come down to my office?" And I said, "Yes, I'd be happy to," because I knew that was going to be the promotion conversation. And I glided down that hallway. I walked into his office. I sat down. He said, "Would you close the door?" And I thought to myself, yeah, of course I'll close the door. We don't want the whole office listening to him tell me how great my work is. That would be rude. So I shut the door and I sat down, and he looked at me and said something I will never forget. Forgive my French, but I'll quote him. He said, "What in the hell is on your arm?" And he pointed. You can't see it right now. It's up here. But he pointed to a snake that wraps around my arm, and it comes out just below the elbow. It was, at the time, the most visible tattoo that I had. And he said, "What the hell is that? Listen carefully." You know what, Todd? He cut me off. "I don't care what that is. I care that the client saw it. I care that they made comments to me. They questioned the quality of the talent we hire because you're apparently not smart enough to cover up those ridiculous tattoos in a professional environment." That's what he told me. And he didn't ask for my input, and he didn't care what I was thinking. He said, "Listen, you're going to grow some social intelligence right now. I don't want to see that ever again in this office or at a client site. Do you understand?" And I felt about this tall, and I felt like I was melting. And I said, "Yes, sir," because it was the only honest, useful thing to say, and I didn't have any power. And I said, "Yes, sir." Now, fast forward, that happened. That hurt. He ripped me this way and ripped me that. I thought I was getting promoted. Oh no, I was getting in trouble. You ever been there where something happens you didn't even see coming? Fast forward a couple of years, an old friend of mine was coming through town. I had left consulting. I had become a professor. I'd earned a PhD, and I'd started doing a little outside work, building a brand, trying to look forward to a day I could do talks like this with you all the time. And I got a call, old friend coming through town. I met her late that day. I was very excited. I had a gig at a corporation on stage, and then I had to teach a class, and then I ran to lunch, and I saw her. I hadn't seen her since high school, and we were young in school together. That's a unique friend. That's someone who knows all the weird, silly, probably unacceptable things you did when you were young. You can't posture and manage impressions too much with a friend like that. We saw each other and we hugged like old friends. And at some point, she just started staring. I was wearing a jacket, and that's what she was staring at, a nice suit coat, because after Madame Morris, when I got ripped, I started looking like an adult, and I was wearing a jacket everywhere, not just a shirt and tie, but I put the jacket on and I kept it with me all these years because it made me an adult and acceptable to people, and no one questioned me. And I went to lunch with her, and I'm wearing the jacket, and she started staring at it and looking at me. And finally, she just started giggling. I said, what are you laughing at? And she's looking here. I'm like, do I have food or something, right? She said, listen, man, you know, and I know that you're just about the most casual guy walking around planet Earth. When did you decide to grow up and start wearing all this adult clothing? And I told her the story about why I'm wearing the jacket and how I got ripped in Madame Morris, Mexico by my boss. And she politely looked at me and listened to me. Long story short, she said, maybe I appreciate why you did that at first, but I don't think you should do it anymore, because I know the messages you're trying to share with people. And if you want them to listen, you got to be the most real version of you. And I said, yeah. She said, yeah, take off the jacket. That's my advice. Take off the jacket, roll up your sleeves, and intentionally show your ink. That's what she told me to do. And I told her, that's not going to work. I know organizational life around this planet, they're not ready for that. And she said, it's going to work. Do you know why? And I said, why? And then she said something that changed the course of my career. She said, don't ever forget this. People like real. As a scientist, I knew that to be true. As a person, apparently I wasn't yet living that. Listen, you want to talk about success in your career? Relationships are everything. And if you want them to truly be maximized for you, for them, for the team, for the organization, you can't be a full-time actor. We're all going to manage impressions, but you're supposed to do it this much, not this much. Because when you let down your guard, pull back the curtain, and be a little measured, a little less filtered, a little more real, a little more authentic, like she told me to do, most people will appreciate that, will feel validated by that, will reciprocate that, and then a bond starts that otherwise would not have existed. That's where trust begins. That's where rapport sets in. That's where principled, smart risk-taking starts. That's the foundation of innovation, if ever there was one, and it doesn't cost you a penny. You just have to be a little introspective, honest, and willing to do what she told me to do, which is to be more real. 3 ideas for you in our short time together today. Number 1, if you want to care about authenticity, really, you just have to learn to show your ink or find your own version of that. What's the slightly more real, unfiltered version of you? Second idea, you ready? Stop hiding all of your imperfections full time. So many professionals that I meet, and I get to meet a lot of them, really want to manage impressions so much they never talk about their mistakes. Listen. There are only a few things that truly make us all human and similar. One of them is that we're ridiculously imperfect. We make errors, we make mistakes. Sometimes we're involved in flat out failures that hurt, that we're not proud of, that we're embarrassed by. Fine, that's normal. That makes you a part of the human family. Why do you have to deny it so much full time? I'm telling you, if you will think about, stop hiding in the back of your head, think about, maybe even talk about, write about in your journal, talk to your coach, your mentor, your close friend, your family members. Small amounts. I'm not saying you're supposed to talk about your imperfections and screw ups every day, all day. That makes you strange. Don't do that. but you're not supposed to ignore them full time, which is what most professionals do. You're supposed to find 2, 3, 4 times a year where you bring it out in the presence of others and talk to them. I'm going to give you one very quickly now because we're on a clock today. So here it goes. You want to know why I enjoy speaking and I'm able to do it at a high level on a whole lot of stages around this world? Well, there's different reasons for that. The best reason is because about 15 years ago, I stood in front of a very large corporate audience for a company some of you might have heard of called State Farm, a very large insurance firm. There's about 500 people in the audience, lots of lights and cameras. It was my first big gig with a brand name firm and a big fee, lots of attention. I was excited. Look at me, I've arrived. That's what, excuse me, that's what I thought. And then the gig started and I started to do something you should never do. I acted like a professor. That's not for the stage, folks. I used big words because I can. I used slides that were dense that no one could read. I did everything wrong you could do, including turning my back to read my slides. You should never do that. I didn't know better because I thought I was a real pro, and I guess I wasn't. And that audience tuned out. They didn't care. They seemed very uninterested. And I saw that, and it was weird, and it was embarrassing. And I looked at my watch like, I want to go home. How much more time do I have? I got 45 minutes to go. What do you do with that? I don't know. I can tell you the punchline to this long story that I'm only giving you a little preview of. The punchline is that it hurt badly to be reduced to, well, a not so interesting person in front of all these people who were paying to hear me pontificate. But if you're smart, and I know you are, you'll get over that pain faster, not slower, but faster and faster every time little setbacks happen. And you will choose, because everything in life is a choice. You will choose to use it as a learning catalyst. Because I stood on stage and failed miserably, I then knew I had to become a student of speaking, not just a naturally pretty good speaker. And I spent hours and hours, like a good learner, watching video on YouTube and elsewhere of all kinds of great speakers throughout history. And I took notes and I watched their video. And then I watched video of me and I cried because the gaps were clear. And I took notes and I tried. Every time I got on stage after that, every single time I adopted my own version of something those greats taught me. And I got a little better and I got a little better. And today I get to do versions of this full time around planet Earth. And I'm grateful for that. And there's lots of reasons, but the best reason is that I stopped hiding from my mistakes and I chose to start using them as catalysts for becoming better. And now you know you're imperfect. I'll tell you a secret. I know you're imperfect. So what? The question is not whether you're imperfect. When you think about success, the question is, do you want to be among the most proficient learners out there? That means using all those setbacks, mistakes, and errors as beautiful fuel for getting deeper insights about yourself, for changing how you're doing what you're doing professionally, for making you better. Success in a nutshell, more authenticity in relationships. Use those mistakes, laugh at and learn from those obvious imperfections we all have. Last one, listen, as you go through this journey, you're going to face challenges. Sometimes you're going to try and act on the advice I'm giving you, and it's going to go very well for you, and that makes me very happy. I can't wait to have an email telling me all about it later. Sometimes it's not going to go well. Someone won't understand you, won't like authenticity, and maybe will push back in some fashion. Fine. That's a normal part of the learning process of you trying to reach out and grow differently around other people. That's normal. I want you to remember this word, perspective. The third idea that's so essential is perspective. Everything's a choice, and perspective is a choice too. When you face those challenges and not everyone gets you, understands you, supports you, what do? Is it anger? Is it pulling back out of a situation and isolating? No, it's positive perspective. Learn something, engage differently, grow and change. That is a productive choice of perspective. It's a choice. I'll tell you my favorite, very, very brief incident that happened to me that reminded me that perspective is everything. I was speaking for a client at a very large motor speedway in the United States. This is one of those massive things. It's popular in America and other places around the world where men and women get into cars that are ridiculously too fast, unnecessarily too fast, and they go around a track and have a contest to see who's the best at that. It's called NASCAR, the most popular one in the United States. I'm not into that, but I had a client who was having a gig at one of those tracks, and as a perk to the speaker and a few other people, they let us take rides in professional race cars driven by recently retired professional race car drivers. And they put the big suit on me and they put the helmet on me, and I got in the car. There was 6 cars. I'm in the one in the back, and we started going, and I've never been so scared in my life. I admit that to you fully. I'm not a car guy. I don't care about going particularly fast. I really don't care about pushing the outer limits of car speed, which is what we were doing. We're going around 8 scheduled laps. We hit the first turn. I'm smushed against my door. I've never felt force like this in my life. And I was going faster than I'd ever gone in my life. And frankly, all I was thinking about was the end of this ride. So I could say, at least I survived. We went around the second turn, not the second lap, just the second turn out of 4 in this loop. And right in front of me, the 5th car spun out, maybe 30, 40 feet. That's it. They spun out, and we're going at well over 100 miles per hour. Spun out, smashed the wall, smoke, fire. My driver, emergency maneuver. By maybe 10 feet, we missed the explosion and pulled off the track. I'm sweating, my heart's beating. I can't believe I'm alive. My life literally flashed before my eyes. All the other cars pulled off as well. And we got out and we took off our gear and we gathered around, and they kept us together, and the emergency vehicles went out. Long story short, the person who had the wreck unfortunately hit a small piece of debris on the track. The driver was shaken up, not harmed. The passenger, another person at the conference, just like me, a VIP of some sort. I don't remember which company she was from, but yeah, she was small and she looked kind of petite and demure, and she was shaken up and had what we thought was a concussion. She had a big gash and she was bleeding. Personnel came out, the doctors that were on site came out, everyone took care of her. We thought, wow, what a story, we lived. I can't believe I actually did that, I said to myself. And then something happened that I'll never forget. About 30 minutes later, this small woman who survived the crash walked over to us. And we were like, hey, how are you? You're not in the hospital. That's wonderful. She's got a big bandage on her chin now where the gash was. And she's holding her helmet. And she goes, wow, that was unexpected, wasn't it? And we're all like, yeah, I can't believe you're alive. That's amazing. She said, well, I think we should go again. Now, every one of us in this group of 5 other people were thinking, I don't ever want to do this again. Why would you? It's dangerous and crazy. And this survivor with a bloody gash looked at us. The smallest person there, this woman said to us, you know what? We have a task to do. The way I look at it, we've already got the accident out of the way. It's not likely to happen again. Let's go. And she convinced us in about 10 seconds with her focus, her clarity, her perspective on this incident that in fact, she's right. We hadn't finished this task. Let's go do it. And I was scared still, but somehow also excited for the first time that day. We got our gear on, we got in those cars, we did 8 laps, and it was ridiculous fun, even though I was scared. And I wouldn't have today this story or this sense of how important perspective is if it wasn't for this 5'1" tall woman who got thrown into a wall, barely missed death, and then reminded us, hey, it's okay, we're alive. That little risk is done. We're going to be fine. We can do this. Let's go. And I'm grateful to her for this. So I ask you, what are you afraid of? Come on. The perspective is, can I try again? Can I learn? Can I go and finish what I started? Success is not crazy complex. It requires the right thinking. It requires a little bravery for sure, but it's not complex. I want you to remember to be a little more authentic instead of filtered. I want you to remember to use those imperfections to build bonds with others and teach yourself more about how you can change and grow and improve. And I want you to remember that everything in life is a choice, especially your perspective. When you find yourself facing challenges, you do those things, you're very likely to be a very interesting, successful professional. Thanks for being with us today.
Wow, that was something to take hope today. not something, but a lot. I would request everyone to give him thunder of applause wherever they're sitting, although they would not see him. But that was a story. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And it appeared as if you are speaking to me. Your eyeballs were staring at me. And I have never seen any speaker as focused as you were. Thank you. Great. Okay, so I have few questions, and I invite the audience, if they have any questions, to post it in the chat box so Renira could pick those questions. Um, Dr. Todd, you narrated your story uh, from you were at age 20 and how the world perceived you and your first job and how that gig started. And you narrated everything which is against the norm, a corporate norm, and something that really takes really brave courage like a gladiator to stand out there. And I have been told, or this is something that I always been telling myself, fake it till you make it. Fake it till you make it. The clothes that you choose to wear, the people that you choose to be with, sometimes it's a lot of a fake. And how would you face the truth for those who believe in fake it till you make it?
Well, it's a great question. I don't think that fake it till you make it is a great strategy, and I do not think it's also wrong, because managing impressions is required in organizational life. The question is, can you reduce the ratio between managing impressions and faking it in different ways versus being authentic and real and having your more unfiltered voice heard? The question is, how do you tilt the balance to where you're managing impressions this much and being authentic this much, which is the goal, because no one's ever fully unfiltered full time. That's rare beyond words. And in fact, probably would get most of us in trouble if we had zero filters at all. But you do want to shift the balance of the managing impressions towards more real authenticity. And there's a secret here, and it's not sexy, but it's practical. And I love sharing it because it's the best answer I've ever come up with. You need to figure out how to be great at what you do. The millennials, and especially my friends in the Z's that are up and coming and taking over, don't always love this answer, but it's true. Figure out on the tasks side how to be absolutely excellent, not meets expectations, but in fact, a 10%er or a 20%er, meaning consistently among the high performers, and everyone knows it. If you can figure out through hard work and task side dedication how to be that strong with actual work, it's amazing the latitude people will give you on the social side of the equation to be a little more raw and unfiltered and honest, even when you're not supporting whichever norms might be common in the group. So for example, I'll pick on people in the ivory tower. My last career was as a professor, and when you're in academia, you know what? The coin of the realm is publishing, research, and teaching students, most important coins of the realm. And if you can do those things, no one cares what you look like at all. Shave, don't shave. Blue jeans, sure. Tattoos, who cares? That's all they care about. Corporate life is a little more difficult. We know this, but the rule is still the same. If you can figure out how to be value added on the task side at the highest level, always among the high performers, it's amazing how much more latitude you will earn to be almost as eccentric as you want to be. I believe that. I stand by that.
Brilliant. I love the analogy that you used of value add. Add value, be a high performer, and that will give the latitude. Thank you so much. And that rings another bell to me. During your conversation, you mentioned about being imperfect is okay. And also you mentioned that using mistakes as a catalyst to change. And I kind of like it a lot. And I resonate with myself because I look at where I have made mistakes. But people around, they are not aware where they are going wrong, what mistakes they are doing, even while speaking, even while they are greeting, even when they meet other people, they are unaware. So, so for those people, how they can take the opportunity to use this as a catalyst for change.
That's a brilliant insight, first of all. It's very true. There's our imperfections we're aware of, and then there's our imperfections we are not so aware of. So the answer, my answer to your question is that feedback seeking behavior is really important. Feedback seeking behavior. And what that means is, number one, you have to acknowledge, and this is tough for some people, you ready? You have to acknowledge that you view yourself differently than others view you. That's painful for a lot of people. The question as to whether or not you want to be a high performer is whether or not you can reduce the gap between your self-perception and others' perception of you. So that leads us to feedback seeking behavior. Whether you're talking to one key colleague who watched you give a presentation at a conference, or whether you're talking to a mentor who you see once a quarter in some coffee, I don't know. You've got to ask someone who has insight into you as a performer, someone who will be candid, not just nice. That's not helpful usually in terms of feedback. Someone who will be candid and articulate to tell you maybe what you don't want to hear. The high performers that I've had a chance to go help and watch over time, they know they're imperfect, and it only bothers them this much compared to most people, and they've developed the habit of occasionally, not every day, but once a quarter, 2-3 times a year, they've developed the habit of going to find someone who knows who they are. They ask a question about how they're doing, then they shut up, which is hard for some of us to do, and they listen even when it hurts. Because when you reduce that gap based on others' perceptions, you get a whole lot closer to understanding real imperfections. And only then can you think about how you can change them and maybe use them.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Having feedback seeking behavior can change the game for people. This is an excellent tip. There are many questions running in my head as I speak. One of the things that I see in myself as well, so that it probably can light the bulbs for others. I always pretended to be nice, being nice. Oh, Avil, he's very nice, but it's actually not the truth. There is. The thing is, sometimes people who hurt me, and I'm okay. I take it. I don't retaliate or I don't speak up. And because of the things, those emotions, that feelings that I have held within, sometimes it outbursts as a volcano. And I wait until that moment. And probably because fear of losing out or fear of losing that relationship. Now, sometimes being authentic has these elements of fears.
Yes.
So there are a lot of people when I speak to, and especially in corporate, they have this tendency not to speak up. What is your recommendation for them?
Well, first of all, you're absolutely correct. It is not a risk-free proposition to be more unfiltered and authentic. And it makes me an honest broker for having to address this issue. So I'm glad you brought it up. The real question is how you value genuine relationships. It's true for your friendship circles. It's true for your professional associations and networks as well. Would you rather have 1,000 connections and you're going out of your way to be kind, never speak up when you feel that you should, and other things to maintain the connection in your network? Would you rather have 1,000 of that variety or 10 that are no BS, honest, less filtered instead of more filtered, authentic instead of impression management? I can't answer that for you. I can tell you what I think for most people is a better answer, and that's to lean towards the smaller, more real, I call it a tribe sometimes when we think about, for example, social media, a smaller, real group of people. Let's use the social media as a metaphor. People go out there now and they can pay for all kinds of likes and connections. They can have armies of paid people to get you more likes and connections. Great. Now you've got way more likes than Todd. Okay, wonderful. I may have a smaller pile than you, but guess what? I got mine organically doing what I'm doing right now, trying to connect, say hello, and add value to people, which means that every one of my connections is straight up real, gets me, wants to be a part of this, and it's a reciprocated, value-added relationship. It's smaller, but so much more robust and productive. Which one do you think sounds better? Well, obviously the latter one, the smaller, real one. Here's the surprise part of this answer. When you take that approach and you get a real base of connections because you're not afraid that some people won't like the authentic you end up attracting more people who feel like you feel, think like you think, and then your base grows. So it actually becomes a growth strategy. I like to say in the first year of trying to listen to the types of things I'm talking about, you might have a retrenchment of some sort in your professional network that happens as you try to get more honest and unfiltered and authentic. That is a predictable outcome. It shouldn't be bad if you're measured instead of crazy unfiltered. If you're measured, it's not going to be like you lose 2/3 of your connections or anything like that. But a step back, that wouldn't shock me at all. Long term, it's still a growth strategy because no one is connected to you just because. People are connected to you because it matters. So I would say to you, yes, some people won't like that. Some people won't reciprocate. That's okay. It's the professional version of how you counsel people when they're dealing with their friends. Hey, guys, sometimes there are people in your life that you have to cut out. I hate saying that, but I won't shy away from saying it. Sometimes there are people in your life that you have to cut out. You have to protect your positivity. Now, I don't want you blind. I want critical feedback like we've talked about, but I want positivity and kindness and all these things that we always espouse as values. And I don't want excessive, horrific negativity. And you got to cut that out. Well, guess what? Some version of that probably makes sense in your professional life. It's a hard thing to say, and I don't want you to tell people, you're not helping me and I don't want you in my circles anymore. Never tell anyone that. But you might back away from them and stop investing in them as much as you try to shift your value-added and authentic connections.
Thank you so much. You have been adding value to every question. And I feel I'm losing out of questions now because some or the other is connecting the dots to already that you have answered. But one of the questions that I have is fear of judgment. From childhood, the community, the upbringing, social status constantly only talks about this is the way things to be done. This is how it has to be done. And you are bound to be in that circle. And we choose to be in that circle because of how our circle of influence is.
Sure.
And this judgment haunts many out there.
Yep.
Any message how we can kill that fear of judgment?
Well, you never fully, it's a great question. You never fully kill it. You can learn to look at it far more productively. And culturally from the United States, we're crazy and expressive types of people, as you know, and our cultural norms, for example, trying to please the family is important here, but not as powerfully important as it is in other countries. And as you know, there's many cultural norms in the country. Having said that, those who are afraid to truly be who you are, whether you are gay, you want to be in a relationship that your parents wouldn't approve of, maybe you want to be in a vocation that your dad was not happy about, who knows what it is. I can still relate to that, and so I love sharing this because I don't want you to think I'm just preaching without having lived it. I made choices, my dad, just to make an obvious example that I know some people watching this are thinking about. I made choices he didn't like. When I first got 18 years old, when I got these guys for the first time, when I was 19 years old, started doing this. When I was in my 30s and I decided to do this. When I was in my 40s and I decided to quit a high-paying job to be an entrepreneur, I continued making decisions that were not simplistically safe or suggested by those around me who wanted me to be safe. My dad, after I did this, didn't talk to me for 2 weeks. After I did this, he didn't talk to me for a month. Here's what I believe, and here's what you have to think about. question is there something bigger than those actions that define your authentic self? Is there something bigger that will bring those people who feel disaffected back to you? I think success, kindness, and love, in fact, when you show them in your life, no matter what choices you might make that didn't make sense to them, will bring them back to you, because there are things that are bigger, such as being productive and successful and kind and full of love for yourself and for others. I do believe those transcend and, without using words, speak to people and bring them back to you. If you are fearful of losing or damaging connections, I respect you for feeling that way. I can also tell you it will be a hindrance to your ultimate success, because you have to chase the dreams that you feel you have to chase. Some people will support you, others predictably will not. You tell them with a smile, and it has to be real, that you love them. You step away from their recommendation and go do what you need to do. And with your success, they will come back to you. But if your goal is to never offend them, success will be capped and limited. I honestly think that's true.
You captioned "Success is a good revenge." I have a t-shirt with that title. It's a brilliant thing that you connected with. I think I have seen people around me where parents were against, and when they proved themselves, then there was a level of acceptance. And nicely put up. Thank you. And you related so well with your own personal story.
Well, I have to mention this because I'm not only listening to you and thinking about these ideas, but I'm watching some of these really good comments in the chat over here. And some people are like, I don't know if I could get away with that. Some people are like, hey, what would I feel if my daughter came up with that? Listen to me. I've been on many, many stages, and I've had many adults come up to me, men and women, after gigs and pull me aside and want to talk. And I'm not kidding. I've heard this one many times. You know what? I'm mad at my son. I haven't talked to him for weeks because he got a tattoo. And I thought it was going to ruin his career and really make him look bad in the eyes of my family and my friends. Me. They're always talking about me. And then I watched you and listened to you today, and now I realize that it's just a thing. It's a thing. It's like a hair choice or the favorite clothing that you wear. It's just a thing. And that there's far more important things about that person I should use if I'm going to judge them than that tattoo. Thank you for making me realize that. So I would say to anyone listening, I'm not encouraging, this is important, ready? I'm not encouraging extreme behavior. I'm encouraging authentic, honest versions of yourself to be allowed to come up and say hello. And if you're kind, and if you're hardworking and successful, I guarantee you, eventually, everyone's going to be okay with the authentic you.
Thank you. And I can see the transformation happening in the audience right now. Some of the things that I'm personally taking home today, I've been writing it. There's a saying, when you are in Rome, be like a Roman. And especially we are all expats. Majority of us we are looking at growing in career, having that financial security, and eventually that security as we are looking at this life. And we kind of tend to get adapted to the local rules, regulations, and that is not true. You come from a different culture, a different diversity, and then you have to put in somebody else's shoes, and that kinds of chokes you, and it doesn't keep you happy. Some people quit and go. Some people, carry on because they have to manage the security, right?
Realistic.
Yes. Now, in this situation, how one should pursue in terms of the thought patterns, how one can migrate or transition or still be authentic. Because particularly at career, I've been in the HR shoes, and when we hire people, we look at culture fit. And if the person wouldn't fit in the culture, then there is an orientation period,
Well, actually, there's several questions there. If I was,
Yes.
I'll just talk quickly about organizational life and hiring. You're looking for a certain type of fit when you hire. I think that's correct, and I respect that. I understand that. I've talked about hiring and onboarding other topics many times. But I have to tell you there is an inherent problem in most of the models that support that industry and support hiring managers. We very often see in organizational life that we hire with so much respect for the idea of fitting in and cultural match and all these things, that we end up bringing in people that are too similar to the norm or to the average that's already in the firm. What we know long-term, there was a guy in the 1970s got famous for studying this. His name was Schneider, and his model, which gained a lot of traction, called attraction, selection, attrition. And the idea was very simple. We care so much about getting that allegedly wonderful fit when we bring them in, that we're bringing in things that look increasingly like clones over time. And what we ended up doing at the organizational level is reducing decision-making capacity and reducing creative capacity. So what I would say to you is you are supposed to be looking for, let's call it minimal acceptable alignment or fit for sure. You're also supposed to make sure that every individual has a little something that doesn't look simplistically predictable and utterly aligned, but unique and value added about them. That's number one. Number two, you're supposed to make sure that a small percentage of your hires, let's say 10 to 20%, I don't know of any good science on this, I'm telling you my gut, of people who meaningfully are bright and accomplished, but don't quite look like they have the fit you normally look for. That's a cultural hedge against having an aligned but uninteresting and non-innovative culture. Does that make sense?
Yes, indeed.
That's what you were talking about.
Having minimalistic expectations. I mean, having that good one. I have one last question. There are people at corporate, senior leaders or in middle level, okay, when they are in the office, they have a different personality, the way they speak, the way they approach to the colleagues. And when they come home or their personal life, they are different.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like two personalities of the same person.
Are you asking me if that's good or bad?
Yeah. Is it good or bad, or how one would manage this? Expectations at corporate and expectations at work. At home.
Sure. First of all, that's natural and normal that people do that. The question is, how productive is it? So let me rephrase it instead of personalities and think about this word, identity, different hat that we wear. So the professional hat is one hat. The home hat, there's many home hats, right? We play father, we play husband, we play coach, we play volunteer, we play lots of different hats when we're outside the office. What we know about most successful people is they make sure not to overindulge in just one identity too much, their professional identity, their work identity. So you definitely want 2 or 3 minimum that are equally strong, or any one of them could become problematically strong. First of all, that's I honestly think good advice. Now, should you see a radically different person at home versus at work? The short answer is no. You're not supposed to be identical. That could be strange. We're all a little unfiltered, I think we can admit, at home. You're not supposed to be identical. You're also not supposed to work as hard as we typically work to make sure that they're radically different people. Remember, what you're trying to do is let a little more authenticity in, a little less acting out. So yes, there's a difference. More respectful, more polished, more thoughtful, more measured at work. Absolutely. I'm just reminding you for the umpteenth time today to do it that much, not that much, which is what we usually do. And then, of course, remember, multiple identities keeps you healthy long term.
Amazing. That's a brilliant insight I've ever come across from all my experience so far. Thank you so much for that insights. And I would now invite a realistic Ranira. I call her resourceful, and she's been sourcing great speakers to host Career Day every Thursday. So today you are with us only because of her. And thanks for sharing your insight, your personal stories, and commendable storytelling techniques. And also, I learned one great thing, that you improved by looking at other videos, other great speakers, and that is something which I take back.